Hello, welcome to Go Sea Camping. This week I'm going to be talking about cruising with kids, particularly our own experiences with our own kids, how we manage to educate them, keep them safe, keep them healthy, and what worked for us in terms of peace of mind and how they managed to cope having just the parents on board for keeping them entertained and for their education. A lot of these questions are going to be very different for each individual family and what their own particular circumstances are. So the biggest factor to the success of taking your kids cruising for an extended period really comes down to you as the parents. It's your attitudes that are going to make it worthwhile, and it's your attitudes that are going to make it a success. So it's really your own expectations, both from an educational and safety aspect, that are going to make cruising with kids, especially older kids, successful or not, both for you and the kids. In my mind, there's no doubt that taking your kids for an extended voyage or cruise is really a really positive thing for both you and the children. Kids will always really accept things and adapt to new situations, and they will see it as the norm. Certainly for our kids, it was normal to be where they were and enjoying things. Yes, they're aware of life on land and other things, but at the same time, you've got your family, you've got your home on board, and for them that's a normal part of life. My way or the right way, based on your wisdom as an older person or as a parent. If you're not prepared to adapt, to learn, to change, to sort of back down and to grow a bit, then it's not going to end well. It ends in a lot of tears and frustration. You're the adult in the situation here, so you're the one that needs to change and adapt. The kids are fine. It's yourself. And I kind of know that this is difficult, especially when you get teenagers that are, disrespectful or unruly or mumbling or just rude. But that's going to be the same with any teenagers anywhere. The fact that you're on a boat can compound it, because you just can't walk off and they can't walk off. You're stuck there. But still, it doesn't mean that it comes to a brick wall. Like I said before, you're the adult. You're the one that needs to sort of look at this, step back and say, okay, is it really that important? Is it really so bad? And then just move on from there. I know it's not always easy to be relaxed about this. You've got a lot of fears that of an imagined their future, that if they don't do this and they don't do that and they don't do it then this way, then it's all going to turn to crap for them in the future. Safety is a biggie. Safety is a big issue. It was for us. Our biggest concern was for kids, one of the kids falling overboard while we're sailing. It doesn't take long for you to, it doesn't only takes one more small mistake and bang, you're overboard and that's it. So setting an example is really the key here. So if you have, for us on Tiare, the cockpit was a safe space. You didn't have to wear life jackets or lifelines inside the cockpit, but if you went outside, then generally speaking, well, not generally, you wore a life jacket. And if there were sail handling or it was starting to get a bit rough, then they'll put a lifeline on as well. What needs to be done here is consistency, and consistency is about the adults doing the same rule, having the same rules. You can't expect the kids to follow what they don't see, and they see you're not putting anything on, they'll yell at you, but at the same time that message is going through that, hey, dad's not doing it or mum's not doing it, why do we have to do it? So other than falling overboard, safety on board was just being aware of ropes and the forces and tensions that can be on that. Learning you let go of the ropes. If it's starting to run, just let it go, don't hang on to it, there's too much power in them. Other things is water confidence. Getting your kids confident in and around the water is really important. Jumping off the boat, being able to climb back on again. If they can't swim or don't feel comfortable, that's fine, do it with life jackets. If you're at anchor, they should learn how to climb up the anchor chain and then swing themselves on board. If you've got a sugar scoop, then make sure they can climb up on that. We don't have sugar scoops, so we always made sure that there was either ropes hanging overboard or there's a mooring bridle they could climb up on that. It's just that sort of ability just to get the confidence in the water, and also if you're not used to the beaches and waves, then understanding how wave action works on a beach and how the water's rushing in and how how it gets pushed out the sides, what rips are, how to deal with a rip, undertows and waves, because that's the sort of environment you're living in, and being aware of that adds a lot to the safety and peace of mind for you as a parent, that they're aware of these things and it's not going to be too much of an issue. If they do get caught in one, they'll know what to do. If it's in the water and it moves, it's probably toxic. If it's a plant in the water, you can eat it. I think there's one species of seaweed that is toxic, the rest of it is edible. On the land, it's the other way around. Most plants on the land are inedible or toxic. Most land animals you can eat. So it's the other way around on the water. But a good rule to have is don't pick things up in the water. A lot of them have spines, little things that will break off and embed themselves in your skin. There is nothing worse than trying to dig these things out of your kids, quite often on your bottoms of the feet, the hands. These things work their way into the skin. What we found was really helpful was to be able to have some freezing spray or an ice pack, but freezing spray works better, and then just freeze the area and then just get in there with a pair of jeweler's tweezers, either the flat heads or the really sharp ones, to sort of dig out those little those spines or whatever. It's really painful if you don't do it that way, and so having that type of freezing spray and tweezers is really, really helpful. Right, health. I think I'm going to run out of light soon, but we'll give it a go. Health. Get yourself immunised. Get that card that says you've got all the immunisations for all the diseases out there. There are a lot out there. Cruising, you're exposed to a lot of areas. Not everywhere. Well, most places don't have good health and hygiene when it comes to waterborne diseases. And there's also mosquitoes, things that live in the water, can give you some very serious illnesses. One of the good things about cruising is that you can anchor a fair bit offshore so that you don't get the mosquitoes every night. We've found that when you have an onshore breeze, that the mosquitoes will then come out. It seems to be that they know that if they don't find anything, they can then get pushed back onto land. The usual cuts, sprains, bruises, that type of thing. It's a really good idea to take a first aid course. It's good to take some first aid books. Have those lying around because the kids will pick them up and read them. They don't bring their own sort of terror that you might have as an adult thinking about your kids getting those. They're actually genuinely interested in how the body works and how it's put together and how you can put it back together again. Have those lying around, take first aid courses, and if the kids can go as well, that's an added bonus. The biggest health issue for us, I guess, was probably the scrapes and little cuts you get as kids do, and I do. The salt water, and especially the tropics, is a good breeding place for bacteria and whatnot, and so we're often sort of getting scrapes and cuts, and then they get infected. So keeping them dry is important, and then having a good supply of antibiotics is also important as well. As much as I don't like using them, and self-prescribing is never a good idea, you don't really have a choice. You're just going to get infections, and you've got to deal with them. Antiseptic cream as well is really good for that. Again, swimming, especially with kids growing up, their ear canals are different sizes. They're not sort of expanded, or they're not as big as they are often for adults, and so they'll quite often get earaches very quickly. So rinsing your ears out after a swim is always a good idea. Putting, I think they're called swimmer's drops. You can make your own up out of alcohol, vinegar and water. That does really well. That just stopped everything. It was, we enjoyed swimming after that a lot, and diving down deep became a non-issue for us after that. Some of the things we've had to deal with are the usual things like the usual headaches and sore tummies. We've had bad bruising, cuts, bruises, cuts and grazes. We've had a green stick fracture. We've had food poisoning. We've also dealt with one of the kids got dengue fever, deep splinters that we've had to take out. So there's been a whole range that we've had to deal with. Fortunately, nothing really serious. I think we've been to the dentist once. Forgotten who that was for. But education. This is a lot more about the parents' attitude than it is about the kids' attitude towards education. Any of the established systems are good. There's a lot of internet schools out there. Most of them are probably quite good. We used Calvert, which we found absolutely amazing. Just the resources they had, the online teachers they had were absolutely fantastic. The kids did really well. They actually enjoyed it. The resources that were posted over were just out of this world from where we came from in New Zealand. Having these sort of resources, actually their own books in full colour printed, was simply amazing. They're not just photocopied out of the teacher's workbook. They were the real thing. It was absolutely, we still got them and I still read them. They're actually amazing. Once the kids had grown out of Calvert, we went on to Wolseley Hall, which we found again really good. That's I've forgotten what it's called now. It's the English system, the GCSEs, A and O levels. They were really good as well. Nowadays there's probably a lot more out there. The internet's more well established and the whole sort of online teaching's becoming more mainstream now, a little bit different a few years ago. How do the kids do? The kids did really well. They all got in the very high scores consistently. As to lesson planning and lesson day, well, lesson planning is taken care of by the school. The amount of hours they would do each day really depended. If we were in Anchorage in a good area, lots of snorkeling and other kids, then the school would be done in 3 hours. They'd wake up early and get it all done. They say, oh, we've done it, look, can we go now? We'll check it, yep, off they go. So 3 hours to get done. Other days would be slow days, they'd start kind of reasonably early, 9 o'clock or so, and then by 5 o'clock in the afternoon would be saying, come on guys, there's no dinner until you finish your homework. And so, those were days when it was frustrating for everybody. But, they weren't that often, and most of the time it was over and done with nice and fast. Did they miss out on areas? Yeah, sure. I'm sure they did. Probably chemistry was a big area which they did miss out on. Calvert does give more stuff, I guess. But then when we went on to their older, they didn't do chem anyway. So it wasn't really an issue. But I'm sure if we were doing chemistry or they had a big interest in it, it would have been more difficult, but then we would have worked ways around it, I guess. I don't know, did we really lack? Did the kids lack? No. Yes and no. Yes, there's all that social scene they lacked, but then there's plenty of other kids cruising as well, so we caught up with them, we hung around with them, which was nice. But then on the other hand, they're also, part of the reason to go cruising with kids is to introduce them to the world, to show them the world as it is. And so there's plenty of, they can see everything around them. It's been, from biology to physics to geography and geology, I guess. Being able to write stories and poems is, a big part of that education, and they certainly had a unique perspective from a lot of their other classmates, online classmates. So, when you find with the kids, one system doesn't suit everybody, all kids. We had 3 kids on board. The middle one would never write notes. He still doesn't write notes. He just reads everything. So he's developed quite a good memory. Overall, the balance, was it worth it? So cruising is as much about the other cruises and the community cruises as it is about sailing and visiting different places. Kids on board meet other kids, other cruising kids, and also make friends with kids on the land as well. And they tend to make them instantly, the kids bond very fast with each other. In fact, there's almost no time, it's just g'day, and then they're in, whether they're playing board games or swimming or kicking the ball around the beach, making up adventures. It's all just happens so fast, which is really nice. It's so different from going to a school on land where it gets kind of cliquey and everyone's in their peer groups and there's pressures and everyone has these sort of weird ideas of what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable. That really doesn't happen on board the boat. One of the great things about watching our own kids is that they'll instantly play with very young kids and join in their games, and that's the same. Older kids will bring their men into their games and everybody plays together, everybody looks after each other, and that's a really nice thing to have. And I think that's really helped them as they've got older, is that the ability to click with any group is really helpful. And it's the same too with the adults, because there's a lot of adults cruising. All of a sudden, you got young kids or older kids that can do things for their adults. The older cruisers can't do certain things, and so the young ones will just shimmy up a mast or dig a hole for them for whatever reasons, clean the holes, and they're really just almost treated as adults by the other cruisers around them. And that really, it's really good for their self-esteem. It's not like the separation that you get back on land with, they're each in their own little group, I guess. And so that's really that's been a big thing as well for them, to just be able to click in and behave in a mature way when they need to. You're meeting lots of different cruisers who come from different walks of life, and you wouldn't normally meet them or associate with them back on land. You've got your own clique or circle of friends or business associates, and that's who you associate with. So you're meeting all sorts. As an example, we've met literally freedom fighter, who, that's what he did. Is another way of saying that. All the way up to people who own large global companies, and everyone else in between. And the kids get to meet them, and the kids get to interact with them. Cruising kids in general are really balanced. They grow into well-balanced individuals, and I think that's probably one of the joys of cruising, is that as a parent you get to see them grow into somebody that is that you're quite proud of, and you're really happy to know as a person, let alone as your kids. So that's my little talk about cruising with kids. I hope it was helpful in some way. If not, well, can't do anything about that. Thanks for watching this far. If you'd like to keep following on our journey or the adventures of Tiare, this is the last of the talks I'll be doing this week. This is the last one for a while anyway, at least. The rest of the time is going to be back on Tiare, more practical stuff. The weather's starting to warm up. I hate cold weather. I don't like working in it. It's just horrible. So from next week onwards, hopefully the weather will be slightly warmer than it has been. So we're back onto the engine bay, back onto designing some soundproofing that's cheap and affordable and works. We need to haul out, which is going to be difficult because there's no cranes and things around here, so I've got to find a ramp that I can put the boat in and then drag her up somehow. Haven't worked that out, but we'll do it. Quite an interesting year. I'm looking forward to sharing it with you as well. So thank you very much, and hit the subscribe button and the like button too, please.
Making use of all this time.